Good evening, Broncos country. We are live. But before we get started, we want to make sure that we have all of our platforms included for tonight's healthy discussion. All right, and looks like I see green check marks across the board. Welcome in, everyone, to another episode, a Sunday edition of the Orange and Blue View. I am one of the hosts here, Ron White. On that side of me, you know him, you love him, my partner in crime, Mr. Dylan Von Arts. So, Dylan, how are we doing now? We are about 24 hours past the game with Broncos and Bengals. Broncos they didn't pull it off, unfortunately, but after you kind of had 24 hours to kind of let it sink in, settle in a bit. So how are we feeling?
Still pretty disappointed in how things happened. Obviously, how the outcome, and with a lot of decisions made by Sean Payton, some of the lapses on defense, and yeah, just still kind of bewildered to be honest. I even after I slept on it, it's still some things I want to answer, but I do have a lot to say. Uh, we'll just put it that way.
Yes, I do as well. But before we get into that, we want to say hey to a few folks who have joined us in the chat. Let's see who we have here. We have Mr. David Malcorath, the Papa Bear. Thank you, David, for coming in as always. You know, we always appreciate you, my guy. He says, "Good evening, Broncos country. Hashtag 10 and 7. Hashtag let's go Bo. MHH for life. Buckham times 3. Different Broncos for life." Again, David, thank you for coming in. And yep, if hopefully the Broncos take care of business against what we think will be a Chiefs backup squad that's going to be starting next weekend. But if they take care of business, they're 10 and 7, and they are getting that last spot in the AFC wild card picture, playoff picture. So thank you, David, for coming, and we appreciate you, my guy.
Always good to see you, David. And man, your 10-7 prediction, even since what training camp, even before
Yeah.
that, insane that it's coming down to it. And the Broncos, if they want to get in the playoffs, like you mentioned, Ron, they have to they have to win this, and they have to go to 10-7 because ultimately it falls on them. I hate the Dolphins have to lose, and now the Bengals have to lose. Obviously, the Colts took a pretty big nosedive today, so they're out of the race, but you can't rely on other teams. It's all on the Broncos, and got to push your chips forward, man. But yeah, that 10-7 record, man. You had that from the get go. Love that.
Yes, I do as well. I do as well, David. Thank you so much for coming in, my guy. We always appreciate you. And we got MBLX Test Prep coming in. Thank you. It's good to see you too, my man. He says Dennis Allen will be a great DC in Denver next year. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with Vance Joseph. I know, there have been rumblings of him wanting to maybe possibly be a head coach again. Somewhat might poach him for another head coaching job, but if that does happen, then I think Dennis Allen would be really good in Denver next year. I mean, Dylan, you saw the lapses on defense yesterday. You just, I mean, the fact that the Bengals did not punt at all in regulation. But just let that sink in. The Bengals did not punt once in regulation. That is just, oh my god. And yeah, I know they made a few key fourth down stops, but that was in Broncos territory. I mean, so they were moving the ball well. I mean, you can get off the field on third down. And so, in addition to that, you had, I would say the defensive line played well enough, but the middle linebacking core and the secondary was just not good. Again, you saw Cody Barton, Sternad in coverage. Yeah. and then Riley Moss struggled, which I knew. I kind of had a feeling him coming back from the injury, he would have some struggles, but Burrow just picked on him, just picked at him, and Higgins went off. Um, but yeah, I think with this NBL test prep, again, if Vance Joseph does go, um, I think Leonard probably would be the next in line, Jim Leonard. Um, but if that doesn't work out, if something happens with that, I think Dennis Allen is a nice option as a DC.
Yeah, thanks for hopping in test prep. And yeah, I think Dennis Allen, especially with the familiarity working with Sean Payton, that would be a great connection there, obviously. But as Ron mentioned kind of at the end uh, of his rant there, that Jim Leonard is a guy that I would really like to see. I think he's very creative, especially when it comes to utilizing his DBs, safeties, corners. So I'd rather be in-house for that, but that's assuming VJ is gone, obviously. And well, I do think he'll get some looks for head coach. I'm not sure he would leave for just any job. And this is gonna be a little weird. I'm gonna do something weird and defend VJ here a little bit. Actually, there was a lot of times that the Broncos were in position to make plays on defense, and the play calling is getting harped on a lot from what I've seen. It's coming down to execution a lot of the time, though, especially like you mentioned when it comes to those linebackers. Absolutely terrible, whether it's coverage, even in run defense, they're just breaking through arm tackles, man. It's terrible. And also with Riley Moss, you mentioned, I don't think he's 100%. I mean, when you're this far into the season, no one is. So there's that. But coming back to play against T freaking Higgins, I mean, that's a tall task. And while I don't think he had a great game, I don't think he's ultimately the reason that these Broncos lost, especially defensively.
Yeah, I don't think so either. You know, again, they just didn't execute at all. They couldn't get, um, like I said, Jonathan Cooper, DeAndre Tillman. They had pretty solid days, but I would just say overall the defense just didn't execute as a whole. And again, NBL testers, thank you for coming in. We appreciate you as always. Got C Chain coming in. Thank you. It's always good to see you as well. It says 10-7 is our last hope. Yeah. Win and they're in. It's just really that simple. And again, as I said, there shouldn't be any excuse with the Chiefs having their backups on the field. The Broncos should be able to take care of business next week. But thank you, C Chain, for coming in there.
Mm-hmm.
All righty. Let's see who else.
Oh, and Ron, just before we move further, I noticed we're connected to Instagram tonight. That's new for the Orange and Blue View tonight. So just want to say hi to all you folks on Instagram and thank you for joining us. And hopefully you stick around and listen to us talk for a while. Obviously, big topics after the game.
For sure. Hello to the IG folks. Good to see you. Thank you for checking in. We appreciate it. All righty. Let's see who else we have in the chat here. Let's see. Just a second here, guys.
Oh, looks like we have chat up here from Instagram.
Okay.
This must have come in before we connected, so we got this thrown up here on Instagram. We have Ronald Rowland, and he says we need to find an OC instead of Sean Payton calling plays. Wow, what do you think of that, Ron?
I've actually this is a good one, Roland. I was thinking about this, Dylan, and I'm not opposed to that. I do think you see a lot of, the east-west, the horizontal plays, the screens with Sean Payton, and they're so predictable now. I think there needs to be more plays down the field. I mean, you saw later in the second half when you kind of get Bo flowing that he was able to make that beautiful touchdown pass to Mims. So I think there needs to be plays like that. I know in the preseason, I think Joe Lombardi was calling the plays in the preseason. So maybe getting back to that. Because because Bo looked good preseason. Now I know preseason is vanilla defense, things like that, but maybe having Joe Lombardi, kind of dial up more the play calling might work to the benefit of this offense. I'm not so opposed to that. Um, but I just think, Payton and Lombardi need to really look at catering more to Bo's strengths. Like, kind of getting him on the run out the pocket, making those deep balls down the field, because the screen game, man, Dylan, it's good when it works, but again, a lot of the defenses know what that is now, and they're going to adjust and adapt to that.
Yeah, maybe if we could get a someone else to call the plays situationally, when you get to the end of games and maybe into overtime, because that's where the biggest gripes are coming from in this game. I mean, I'm just going to get into Sean Payton's decision to go for this
Yeah.
tie, right?
Sure.
And I mentioned it on X. I posted, like, I think that was just cowardly. I don't know what the mindset is there. Obviously, it's like, oh, you're playing the tie, which to me means you're not playing to win. You're playing to settle. You need one game to get into the playoffs, and you guys haven't been there since 2015. And Sean Payton says, we can mess around. We can just kind of settle and hope that the Bengals, who have ended up dropping, let's see, Joe Burrow dropped 412 yards and 3 touchdowns, and you want to give that guy the ball back. I know, just let's take out what actually happened in overtime for a second, but just the thought process there of giving the red hot Bengals, who've been on a tear. Joe Burrow's thrown at least 3 touchdowns in the past, I believe, 8 games. So that's just insane to me that you would even allow him to get the ball in his hands. But then you get to overtime, and the play calling, you're playing not to lose. And what do you do? What happens more often than not is you do lose those games. We've seen it for the past 8 years. The Broncos just try and play too conservative. And it's just so frustrating. Like, you mentioned the screens, like that one to Mims in overtime. Like, what are we doing? Run the ball. That's what's working. Obviously, they're going to be playing that. But I'd be hard pressed to believe that you get negative 3 yards on a run with just how well they had been blocking up front. And it's just all around so frustrating. And I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Ron? Oh, you're muted.
Thank you about that. Yeah, I'm just, just to have, that mentality. I don't know what Sean Payton was thinking in the moment, because, yeah, the tie, but to you, what you just said, the defense couldn't stop anybody. And yeah, you're just kind of playing to settle. And if you get into overtime, more than likely, you lose. So I guess that underdog mentality. And speaking of underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. Join over 5 million fans who are already playing on Underdog. With their pick'em game, you could win money by making entries with your favorite players. Compete against other players just by selecting higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog.
With their champs game, you could win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on player stats like passing yards, interceptions, touchdowns, and much more. Like, for example, will Bo Nix have higher or lower than 231.5 passing yards next week? Will he have higher or lower than 1.5 passing touchdowns? Every dog deserves a second chance, and with Underdog Rescues, you can get your money back and receive a promo if an early injury causes your entry to lose.
So download the Underdog app today and use Huddle to get up to 1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, download the Underdog app today and use our code Huddle to get up to 1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every touchdown, just select higher or lower on Underdog.
Must be 18 plus, 19 plus Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply, void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY.
And to go back on, my thoughts on not going for two. Dylan, the Broncos had the momentum. They had the momentum.
Sean
Like,
said it himself.
you're after that score, your quarterback holds up that, So again, it just shows that again, you don't, in my mind, you don't trust him to a degree, and you're just playing for the tie. You're playing, oh well, we can tie them, and that'll get us into playoffs. No, because chances of you tying are slim to none. So, a few reasons here, right? Defense was struggling. That wrong mindset mentality. The offense was, like I said, driving. They were dealing, catching breaks. Bo found Mims again for that second score. They were good to go. But it just didn't make sense to me. Like I just don't understand, because you're just leaving that door wide open for that silent killer in Joe Burrow. You're leaving that door open for that offense. So yeah, it's just such a big head scratcher. It's such a big head scratcher. We got Phil McLaughlin coming in. Thank you, Phil. It's always good to see you. Says, good evening, Ron and Dylan. Ridiculous to let give up so many yards. Why didn't we go for two? Why didn't we run more in OT? Hashtag Buckham, hashtag MHH for life, hashtag Broncos for life. Yeah, Phil. Again, those are the questions that I don't know. Again, you go back to that screen game in overtime. You should have ran Jaleel more. Jaleel was the hot hand, and the fact that you didn't have him run consistently was also a big head scratcher. But I think to answer your question on the why did we go to two, Sean Payton was just settling. I think he was coaching and playing scared. Like he thought, oh, the tie was good enough to get us in the playoffs, and thinking that the defense could have stopped Joe Burrow, knowing that they did not force a punt. That's the thing. They did not force a punt in regulation. So yeah, it's just mind-boggling, Phil. It really is. It really is.
Yeah, thank you, Phil, for hopping in. As always, love to see your name popping up in the chat. And you always give us great questions like this. Unfortunately, the answer to that, so you ask, why didn't we go for two? Well, from Sean Payton's mouth, they had the momentum, which I'm hard-pressed to find what that means. It's like, you have the momentum. Maybe you should go for it then. Is that you don't just carry that over into overtime? That's it leaves me. I'm at a loss for words. It's absolutely ridiculous, and you have to trust your young quarterback there. This is a team that Vegas said was only going to win 5 games. I even predicted. I said 6, 7 games just based on rookie quarterback, offensive weapons severely lacking, and then we didn't know how the defense was going to be. And you have a chance to make the playoffs. You're at 9 wins. With one, you have to win 1 game out of these next 2. Bengals, Chiefs. You don't know if the Chiefs are actually going to sit their starters yet, and you're just going to try and back in to the playoffs. You're not going to be aggressive and go for 2, and instead, let's give Joe Burrow another chance. Again, despite what happened to overtime, just that thought process to hand the ball back to a Joe Burrow who is quite possibly the best pure pocket passer in the league right now. Absolutely just mind-blowing. And as for why we didn't run more in overtime, I don't know either. Sean Payton likes to use the screen game as an extension of the run game, despite the fact that your run game was working pretty great all game, like Ron mentioned, with Jaleel, who was just busting open these runs between the tackles, like through the middle, which was crazy for. I mean, that's something you would see Audric Estime doing maybe, but Jaleel was just having a game, and to not even look his way more often in overtime when you had 2 drives to do so is absolutely just egregiously terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. I just had a loss for words. But thank you, Phil, for coming in with the question. We appreciate it. And have another one here, Phil. Moss was okay considering he just got back on the field and McMillan got burned way too much. Yeah. Yeah, Phil. Again, Moss is coming back from that injury, and you're dealing with one of the top receivers in Higgins. It can be a tall task. Again, he did struggle. Yes, some of that was to be expected. And yeah, McMillan got burned a lot. Yeah, in coverage he got burned quite a bit, and also the linebackers, as I mentioned, Barton, Sternad, they just look out of their element in coverage. But again, thank you, Phil, for coming in. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. And I'm really glad that you brought up the McMillan point because that's probably going to go under the radar for some people just because Moss, was the big headline. Oh, he's getting thrown out all the time. McMillan had an awful game. This wasn't just a Riley Moss breakdown. This was a Jaquan McMillan just, like you mentioned, getting burned in coverage or not securing tackles. Even when he had that free hit on Burrow on the blitz, he just whiffed it. And you love to see he does consistently get home, but when he gets after the quarterback, he just can't bring him down. Like he disrupts him, which is great, but he's a smaller guy and he's not always going to make those plays. But yeah, McMillan should be sharing some of the blame there as well. Thank you, Phil, for bringing that up.
Yes, for sure. And we got the Ronk checking in. Thank you, Mr. Rico Ronquillo. We appreciate you coming in as always. He says the Miami Dolphins won, so it comes down to the last NFL game. Yes. With the results now from Week 17, now that the Colts are out of it, being eliminated by Drew Lock and the Giants, which was a little bit of a shocker. The only 2 teams in the hunt are the Miami Dolphins and the Cincinnati Bengals. I believe it's Miami then Cincinnati. So Broncos again got to take care of business next week and cannot hope for those 2 teams to lose to try to back in the playoffs. I think they just need to go ahead and win it and secure it on their own terms.
Absolutely. You can't leave anything up to chance, especially destiny has been in your hands the last 2 weeks. Against the Chargers, you blew it there. Against the Bengals, despite getting every gift from God, every break, a missed doinked field goal, some turnovers even, an immaculate catch from Marvin Mims, and you still couldn't get it done. You have to get it done against the Chiefs. I know they said they're going to rest starters. Who knows if that's maybe if they play like a preseason game, they get a couple drives or whatever. But regardless, absolutely have to win next week.
Yeah, definitely. And again, thank you, Mike, for coming in. We appreciate you, my guy, as always. We got Mr. Mark Lowe coming in from Facebook. Thank you, Mark. New name for me. He says the issue isn't going for 2 or not. The issue is the pathetic play calls that cause them to go 3 and out on both possessions in overtime. The issue is that at a time when 1 first down was all that was needed, they went from 2 and 7 to 3rd and 9. The stupid short screens are killing this team by putting them into 3rd and long most drives. Dylan, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from in terms of not going for 2. So let's just look at this as looking at overtime, right? You're absolutely correct. The play calling was absolutely abysmal. You know why? Because they were, again, playing for a tie. They weren't going for the throat like they should be. You're playing with house money, right? Sean Payton's got job security. He's got no excuses. This isn't like, oh, I've been on the hot seat and I just need to play conservative and hope that we can win. Dude, this is your 2nd year. You've probably got at the very least 2 more. you need to be calling a little more aggressive of a game. And it seems when the Broncos are ahead, his play call, he starts to not trust Bo as much. But when they're behind, he's like, okay, I'll cut you loose. And that's when Bo Nix has played very well, like we saw just this last game. The running away from the running game, haha, and using screens when it's just you're going to lose yardage. Like what happens if obviously Mims caught the ball, right? But he lost 3 yards. Okay, what if he doesn't catch the ball and then you're giving the Bengals a free timeout there? Like it's just all sorts of things. And I know there's some people who want Sean Payton fired. That's obviously not what I'm saying. I think that's ridiculous. But he deserves heavy criticism. You're a Super Bowl winning head coach. You don't let people forget that, or how smart you were for taking Bo Nix and saying, oh, he has all this moxie and stuff, but you're not going to trust him to go get a 2-point. You're not going to trust him to throw it around a little in overtime. And even if you are just trying to play for a tie, losing yards on that screen, terrible play call. And now it's third down. It's like, okay, well, now you need to at least get a first down, but now you've completely put your team behind the 8 ball. So it's frustrating on multiple fronts. And yeah, the screens especially, like, man, I just don't know what we're doing there.
Yeah, Mark. I'm with you on the play calling front for sure. And to add on to what Dylan said, not even being consistent with the running game too. Like I said, I'm not going to knock anything Sean Payton has done because he's turned this franchise around, tremendously over his short stint. And we know from a coaching perspective what he brings. One of the top in the game. But I'm thinking, Dylan, just from a play calling perspective, I think that's where my issues are.
Mm-hmm.
And just not recognizing, not being aware that you're calling screens and it's not working. Like it's not working. You're losing yardage. The defenses, the guys on defense are too athletic, too fast now. They're making the tackles behind the line of scrimmage. So, and then also if you're not running the football consistently, like you're still switching out personnel, not consistent, not staying with one particular back. I just think those are some of the questions that I have, and I think as a play caller, those are some of the adjustments he needs to try to make to, again, fit to Bo's strengths, because you just alluded to it. Like when Bo plays freely, I mean, you see what Bo can do. Bo has a nice arm. Bo can throw the ball down the field, but you got to allow him to do that. That's catering to his strength. Again, if you can run the ball consistently, set up the play action, kind of get Bo Nix on some of those boots, have him go right and left out of the pocket, make the plays down the field, I think that'll be better for this offense. I think he's still living in that Saints phone booth when he was the coach of the New Orleans Saints, like that 07, 08 offense, when nowadays, offenses have improved dramatically. So I think that needs to be corrected. Thank you. Oh, got one from Twitch. Black Knight 323. Thank you. Says, let's be honest. I'm happy that the Broncos lost because we have so many glaring holes on the offensive side of the ball. Yeah. I wouldn't say that I'm happy that they lost Black Knight 323, but I get your point. And the fact that this does expose a few holes, and not just offense, defense too. Especially at the linebacking position. Offense, and we've talked about it on a few pods before. But I would say offense, you need a tight end that can stretch the seam, stretch the field. another running back. Now it still kind of remains, to be seen if Estimate could be that guy. I mean, I know he's getting a little bit more opportunities now. Um, but I'm pretty sure they're going to go in the draft or even maybe free agency for running back. Another wide receiver that can create separation is also needed. So I would say those are your three top holes there on offense. And yeah, I think if some of that, and obviously they'll have the offseason, the draft, and free agency to take care of that. But I wouldn't say they're like too many glaring holes, but I would say another playmaker at a few of those position groups I think would serve this team well. So once you give Bo that heading into his sophomore season, I think you'll see Bo even be better.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and thank you again for coming in, Black Knight. Always good to see some Twitch comments coming in. I'm with you, Ron. I don't agree with the happy they lost part, but there are some glaring holes. But at least offensively, we're starting to see this Mims and Nix connection. Mims, hey, that's what happens when you use them right. Even Sean himself admitted earlier on in the season that, I haven't really been using him to his strengths. I haven't been using him correctly. So they finally getting the wheels moving on that. And magic. 2 touchdowns, I believe 109 yards, somewhere around there. He's breaking out right in front of our eyes. It's the last couple games of the season. Would have liked to see it a little earlier, but hey, better late than never. So that makes wide receiver even less of a priority. Obviously, you still want someone else there, right? Like Sutton's been pretty good this season. He has some drops still here and there, but makes some spectacular catches at the same time. And now with the emergence of Mims, that speed threat that this offense has been craving for years now. You had Hamler, he didn't work out, and other nameless bozos I can't even remember because they didn't work out here. So, yeah, you just need to trust Bo. I just don't understand playing scared when this guy has proven you're not going to rattle his confidence. Just a couple games ago, he threw 3 interceptions and came back and threw 3 touchdowns to help come back and win the game. So you got to have a little more faith in your quarterback, like you said you did at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and as far as going back to your point on the receiver, I mean, yeah, I love what I'm seeing from Mims. I love it. I think, so far he can be, the Broncos' deep threat, it seems. But you still need that person that can create separation in the middle of the field. We don't have that. Now, that's what Jerry Jeudy was, or was set up to be, I should say, in Denver. Who's just a elite route runner, can just get open. And I don't think that's quite there yet with Denver. Now, again, maybe a tight end can be that person. If you get a Colston Loveland or Tyler Warren in the draft, they can come in as your additional receiver to be that guy. But, I do think they need another receiving threat, another playmaker for them, just because you just can't have. And I like Devon Vele as well. I think he's doing pretty well so far in his rookie season, but still need a little bit more juice, in my opinion, on offense. But again, thank you for coming in. And we got David Yunkin. Thank you, David, with a super chat. We appreciate you coming as always. He says, Sean trusts Bo when it's 3rd down, but in the beginning of the game, it doesn't seem like it. That's a good observation. I've picked up on that at times as well, David. Just with kind of, when it's 3rd down, yeah, Bo more oftentimes than not does convert it. But that's where Sean Payton really needs to. Well, a few things, Dylan. I just think you see a lot of these, to what we were just saying earlier there, David, the screens on 1st and 2nd. So with that, it's like, you're 3rd and 5, or maybe even longer than that. And, you're just wanting Bo to make a play when you can prevent that by not calling those screens as often. I'm not saying get away from the screens, because I do think they can be effective when used right. situationally. But I just think that's where, you know, they need to be more aggressive on first down, throw it in the middle of the field, run the ball. Um, so yeah, I just think there's just certain, you know, play calls on certain downs and distances, David, where I think again, Sean Payton can be a little bit more, um, a little more creative with his play calling. But yeah, I have noticed that the third down is kind of where he trusts Bo the most, and Bo does more than times make a play. But you have first and second down, and you need to convert on those as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for coming in again, David. I know you were not feeling the best the other day, so I'm glad to see you in the chat and hopping back in and sharing your time with us, even when you're not feeling 100%.
Yep, for sure. And we got Mr. Michael Ronquillo again coming in. Says the Broncos need to stop giving Javonte Williams the ball because every time he gets on the ball, he can't get off the blocks anymore. Yeah, so did he have I don't think Javonte had a carry in this game, if memory serves me correctly. I think he was in there for a few catches.
Pretty good pass protector, but beyond that, no carries.
Yeah, so no carries. So you're seeing Ronk where they're kind of phasing him out. At least, as a running back. You do see him there, on some third downs because he can, pick up the protections. He can still catch as well too. But yeah, I'm with you as far as a running back. I said it earlier. I just think Javonte's days in Denver are numbered. I just think after that injury, he just doesn't have that vision, Dylan. Like he just doesn't see that cut and can make that cut consistently and go through the tackles. I just think that's missing from his game. But yeah, I do think now, Ronk, with the emergence and more playing time for Jaleel, you see Estimate and possibly a Tyler Bidet coming back potentially. That you won't see any carries from Javonte at all.
And nor should you. We've been screaming about this for weeks now, and it's, I don't want to say too little too late, but I mean it's the second to last game of the season, and you finally see Jaleel getting the bulk of the carries and Estimate getting more carries like we've wanted for weeks because, like you mentioned, Javonte, the explosiveness isn't there anymore. I mean, it's a real bummer. It was a freak injury, 3 ligament tear. Very hard to come back from that, but he just doesn't have the juice. And like you mentioned, his vision has always been a problem. So you mesh those two things together, and it's just absolute hell for the running game. But like I mentioned earlier, Jaleel was getting a bulk of the carries, and he was not just doing well bouncing him to the outside, but up the middle as well. I just wish we would put in more emphasis on the run game. And, when we did, maybe that's part of it. And maybe the run game wasn't used more because Sean kept trotting Javonte out there and being like, oh, well, this isn't going to work. It's like, yeah, dude's running into the back of his own lineman. So, yeah, hopefully we've mostly figured that out. And it seems we're trending in the right direction after a hard cutoff on carries.
Yes, for sure. And again, thank you, Michael, for coming in as always. We got String Guy coming in. Thank you, String Guy. It's always good to see you, my guy. He says, Dylan, the other side of that coin is if you go for 2 and miss, then everyone is screaming why you didn't take the tie. Damn if you do, damn if you don't. Hindsight is 2020. I'll let you answer first.
Okay, String Guy. I hear what you're saying here. This is more than just making a decision to win a football game. This is a culture thing. This is a message thing. And the message you're sending by saying, yeah, we're good for settling for a tie, that's Sean Payton's own words. What kind of message does that send? I mean, you don't have, it's not like saying he doesn't have confidence in Bo Nix, but like, man, like how are you supposed to look at your team after that and be like, oh, we wanted to settle. We wanted to not play to win. I would rather lose playing to win, being aggressive, and, just putting your chips on the table. Let's go win this thing. We got the Bengals on their heels, the red-hot Bengals, who are trying to kick you right out of the playoff conversation. And it's more than just winning the game. It's about the message that sends. And you say hindsight's 2020. I promise you, I was screaming at the TV to go for two. I did not want to see Joe Burrow again on the field, but Sean's done a lot of good things for this team. Like I mentioned, I thought they were going to win 6 or 7 games, and they've won 9 and are in this playoff conversation largely because of Sean Payton. But that doesn't mean I'm going to ignore the blemishes that we've seen so far. The end of last year, the Broncos petered out, lost a bunch of games, right? That trend is happening again. So I'm going to hold him accountable, and at the same time, give him his credit. But yesterday, and not just yesterday, the last 2 games, I think those fall on Sean Payton ultimately.
Yeah, string guy, I see what you're saying. But I'm going to quote. I'm going to make Bill Parcells here, Sean Payton's mentor. There's winning, and then there's misery. So, and the reason why I bring that up, string guys, because to what Dylan just said, I would have rathered Sean Payton go for 2, try to win it. I would have been okay with the result. Like, go for 2, didn't make it. I would have lived with that. But the fact that you are trusting your team to go into overtime to either tie or win when, again, clearly you had the momentum. Your defense, like I said, I'm going to keep saying this, Dylan. The defense did not force a punt in a regulation. So what? I mean, I think they did force one in overtime. Mm-hmm. But what makes you think the chances they were going to force one in overtime are going to happen? And then you also have to look at the number of ties that have even occurred in the NFL, and I'm pretty sure that probability is really low.
I think it's around 6%,
probably 6 or 7%. So again, when you have all those variables, string guy, I really do think, for me, like the reasons, the pros for going for 2 outweigh the cons, because you have so much stacked against you. Given how this game has gone, given how the game played out thus far, Dylan, so much was stacked against the Broncos to even try to win it or go for a tie. And again, with that momentum should have carried them into making that decision to go for 2. Because honestly, Dylan, if they went for 2, that they probably would have gotten it. I'm going to be honest. If they went for 2, I'm pretty sure they would have gotten it. So, the fact that he just settled to trusted his defense to stop Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins in overtime, it's just not a good decision. It just was not a good decision at all.
No, not even close to one. And
so,
yeah.
But yeah, I get your point, Ring Guy. I mean, that's also the other part of the argument is, if you didn't, but it's like, I would rather go and try to win than to suffer or sit there in overtime and having this defense stop this red hot offense. And they did get a few breaks. Cade York did miss the field goal in overtime. So again, a few breaks went their way, but yeah, I just wanted to end it right there in regulation. But thank you for coming in, and we got Rodney Garcia coming in. Thank you. He says hard count on Bo for that 2-point and fake the handoff and roll out to the left side for Bo like Manning did in 2013 against the. I know that exact play, Rodney. Yes. I actually still watch that play today. But yeah, again, you bring up a good point, Rodney. There's so many different ways because they practice, but they practice every type of scenario in practice. Practice 2-point conversions and how that scenario and different plays for that. So again, there were things going their way, whereas though I think if they were to go for 2, and if they had the right play call, they would have converted. But thank you, Rodney, for coming in with that memory.
Yeah, that would have been a great way to do it too, because Bo's actually got some legs on him. So
Yeah,
probably would have been a quicker stroll to the end zone than Manning there. But
yeah,
yeah, just get creative, man. Like I
yeah.
said, put the chips on the table. You got nothing to lose. You weren't supposed to make it this far.
Nothing, nothing. Sure. All right. Thank you, Rodney, for coming in. Let's see who else we have in the chat. Got Rodney coming back in. Thank you. He says there needs to be more design runs for Bo. I have a feeling Nick Bolton will play a few snaps. Yeah. So on that first portion, Rodney, I agree. I don't know why they went from that. I mean, because early in the season, they did incorporate that quite a lot in the offense, and it was working. He's a good runner. He's very athletic. So I think that needs to be used more in this offense. Um, and yeah, I think as far as the Chiefs, again, I know it's been reported that you know maybe most of the starters won't play. I'm not sure obviously which ones, but you may see some of them in there for like um, a few snaps within like maybe the first couple series or so. Um, but yeah, I think Nick Bolton's is the truth. Um, that whole defense, Drew Tranquil and Leo Chenault. That's a good core that they have there on defense. But yeah, I don't expect them to play too much. So again, I think the Broncos should have a good advantage here to win. Hopefully.
Yeah, thanks for popping in again, Rodney. And you bring up a good point. I mean, there was a handful of design runs for Bo towards the start of the season, and they seemingly went away from that. I'm not sure why, especially when your run game is struggling. Whether it be because you're not calling them or your running backs just aren't performing. Uh, that probably would, going back to that 2 point play, now that makes even more sense to me because we haven't busted that out in quite a while. I mean, you might as well get creative with it. And I'd love to see some more design runs for Bo. Not nothing too heavy, but definitely want to get use his athleticism because he is deceptively athletic.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And we got Phil McLaughlin coming back in. Thank you, Phil. It's always good to see. He says we got to do something about Sternad. He is not performing, in my opinion. Also, hats off to McLaughlin, Mims, and Allen. Yeah, Phil. I said it a few minutes ago. Sternad is just not the answer. Like he is horrible in coverage. Horrible. So hopefully, in the off season, um, the Broncos do address upgrades at inside linebacker. But yeah, Sternad isn't the answer at all. I mean, just the whiffs in coverage, Dylan. Just getting beat. It's just a whole lot of bad things from Sternad. He looks inept out there, quite honestly. Um, so yeah, I do agree with you there, Phil. And yep, hats off to those players you named. Laughlin had a good game. Mims had an excellent game, and Zach Allen's going Zach Allen. So, but yeah, it was good to see, those stars show up in this game to at least try to help the Broncos win.
Yeah, and I think the best thing, Phil, that you could do about Sternad is maybe take him off the field.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the Broncos don't have the most exciting options. Zach Cunningham's still on the roster here. I would like to see more Drew Sanders because it was reiterated that he is not an edge rusher. So take that for what you will. I think they'll still probably just move around, but got to try something else because Sternad, like you mentioned, not great in coverage, and just these arm tackling people, man. I mean, they just forget to tackle, and just to even bring up PJ Locke has been pretty rough in that department as well. Moving away from Sternad just for a second, but it's just going to be rough. I think the rest of the season for the linebacker position. There's really no other options. But back to the positives, McLaughlin had a great game. Let's start using him more. It's not too late. There's still one more game yet, and if you win one more, hey, there's another one after that. Mims again had his coming out party. Absolutely amazing. Over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Zach Allen, man. Oh my God. Towards the end of that game, it was like fourth quarter overtime. Absolutely balling. 3.5 sacks is crazy. Him and Jonathan Cooper both started to catch fire there towards the end, and that's what you want to see from your defense.
Yeah. Also, you just want to see good tackling. And the so no, I just can't tackle. Just missing too many tackles. Like, I don't know. So hopefully, and they had, Quan Alexander was a little promising option they had. But yeah, I think for now, gonna have to get by. And yeah, but the Drew Sanders, and I think there was a comment on there. There was a comment on here about Drew Sanders. Yeah, why wasn't Drew Sanders playing more? He's supposed to be cover linebacker. Yeah, I don't know what they're. I mean, it was good to see Drew Sanders when he was out in the field, but I don't know. I mean, I think he had that sack. What was it, last week? And yeah, I don't know. Maybe try him in certain packages at inside linebacker. I think they may have, they toyed with moving him to edge, and I think, some things up here wasn't clicking with him at middle linebacker, but I don't know. I don't know here, Donald.
I think Crumble Cookie actually brings up a good point, and I have to mention every time, but you make me hungry every time I see your name, man. You gotta switch it up or something. I'm trying to stay away from sweets. Had too much of those over the holidays, but as you mentioned, yeah, he did tear his Achilles. Maybe they want to keep his snap count lower.
Yeah, true.
That would probably, I could definitely see that being the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, we are at 51 minutes. Man, this time flies by. All right, so last call for questions, comments before we sign off for tonight. Let's see here. Just want to bring up String Guy. Too many design runs for your rookie quarterback, and the NFL will get him killed. True state. Yeah, I agree, String Guy. And again, we're not saying, let Bo Nix do design runs for 15 or 20 times, right? But, it's kind of one of those things where you want to incorporate it more in the offense, use it as an extension, of the offense. But yeah, So I think if they can use some of that to what they were doing early in the season, I think that'll help this offense out a lot.
Definitely, and it is hard to kind of get back to using those design runs when you don't have a run game at all.
True.
And that's a bummer. But yeah, we don't want to run him like he's Lamar Jackson. That guy's 101. But just use it when it could be advantageous to you, like we mentioned, that 2-point play, or if you've been consistently running the ball and getting yards, hey, have Bo keep it once or twice a game. Nothing too crazy, obviously.
Yes. And then one other comment here from US Dave. Say, what are our chances of getting in if we happen to lose? I'm not sure the percentages, but if we lose and Miami wins, Miami's in. And then if I think Cincinnati wins and Miami and Denver loses, I think Cincy's in. And again, I guess I mentioned I don't know the percentages there, but it you don't want to count on that. So it's always Broncos go in, handle their business at home, and secure it. But I think the Bengals have like a 21% chance or something of making it.
Yeah, I think it's around 17 to 21, somewhere in there.
But I think the Broncos are still 60-something%, 60, like mid-60s or so percent chance of making it. So
exactly. And there was a comment. I know Black Knight said he wanted this answered, and I think it's a good point. Just real quickly to touch on, William comes in and says, was anyone impressed a bit with Tillman? I was surprised. Very. This dude's played, so much football from the UFL and then going in the NFL, and now he has, I believe, 5 or 6 sacks, which is quite impressive, especially being a rotational guy. This Broncos defense has been amazing at taking down the quarterback, and just to have another guy like Tillman on the roster, it is always good to have rotation there.
Always good. Yeah, and when Tillman's been out there, I've liked what I've seen. So yeah, impressed for sure. I guess I wasn't too surprised because the guy does make plays when he's on the field. Um, but yeah, hopefully, whatever, if he's in future of the Broncos plans. I know they're deep there at edge, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, I like what I've seen from Tillman. Thank you, William, for coming in with that. And we want to sign off here tonight with Michael Ronquillo coming in as always from Facebook. Thank you, sir. He says, great show tonight, Ron and Dylan, on the Orange and Blue View. Go Bo Broncos. Again, Mike, thank you for coming in. We appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, that will conclude our episode for tonight. We always appreciate each and every one of you tuning in and asking your questions and exercising your demons and venting to us about the Broncos. So we were right there with you. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, Mile High Huddle, like and share across all of the platforms. And if you have not done so already, make sure you follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. I am at Ron White NFL, and my partner in crime here is at Dylan Von Arcs MHH. Before we get out of here, we want to give a shout out to a few folks that have supported us tonight, and I will hand it over to Dylan for those shout outs.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us tonight. I know it's usually Chad and Zach here on Sundays, but we had the honor of doing the Aftermath podcast here tonight, and just so many new faces here for us and some of the old faces that we love. Of course, I believe we capped out somewhere around 200, the early 200s, so that's might be a record for us on Orange and Blue View. So always good to see that. But as always, we want to give a little extra love to those who came in. Our Super Chat superstars, of course. We got Papa Bear coming in, as always. David McGilra, thank you so much. MBLEX Test Prep. Michael Ronquillo came in 1, 2, 3 different times. Phil as well coming in 1, 2, 3 times as well. And who else we have? Black Knight came in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And David Youngkin, thank you guys so much for showing us a little extra love. It means the world to us, and we wouldn't have this show without you. And just thanks overall, man.
Yes. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. And on to the final game of the regular season, the must-win game at home against the Kansas City Chiefs. So until Saturday, we'll be back on our regular scheduled time on Saturday for everyone here. Until this coming Saturday, hope you all have a great night and a great week ahead. And until next time, go Broncos.
Go Broncos.